Good morning everyone, and welcome to our weekly assembly. Now I'm sure that many of you over the last few months will have visited one of the beautiful beaches that we have here on the coast of the United Kingdom. For today's assembly, Mrs. Carl and I have come to Cromer, which is a lovely seaside town on the coast of Norfolk. In fact, you can probably see I'm sitting by a rather brightly painted beach hut, and I'm struggling to talk over the noise of the waves that are coming in on the tide just behind Mrs. Carl. Many visitors come to Cromer. Some come just for the day, and if you're a bit luckier, you might even come for a longer holiday. Now what I'd like you to do now is to have a really good think and to use your imagination. If you came to Cromer, how would you fill your day? What sort of interesting things would you find to do?
Oh, look, see if you can hook a duck. Come on, everyone. Oh, it's a beautiful day here at the seaside. Plenty of time to build sandcastles or maybe go and have a dip in the sea. Oh, I do like to be beside the seaside. Oh, I do like to be beside the sea. I do like to stroll upon the prom, where the brass bands play tiddly-om-pom-pom. So just let me be beside the seaside. I'll be beside myself with glee. And there's lots of what's beside. I should like to be beside the seaside, beside the sea. Oh, I do like to be beside the seaside. Oh, I do like to be beside the sea. I do like to stroll upon the prom, where the brass bands play tiddly-om-pom-pom. So just let me be beside the seaside. I'll be beside myself with glee. And there's lots of girls beside. I should like to be beside the seaside, beside the sea. Well, what a beautiful day it's been here at the seaside today. Come back again soon, won't you? Have a safe journey home. Take care now. Bye-bye.
Now this week in school we have been looking at the book Fotsam, which is about a very curious young child who loves nothing more than to walk along the beach collecting objects that have either been left there or have been washed up by the tide. Mrs. Carl is going to tell you a story now about another young boy who loved this hobby too, and she'll tell you about how much this brought joy to him and his family.
It was summertime and 10-year-old JJ had found his way down to the beach. In fact, today was like any other day because every day JJ found his way down to the beach. He was very fortunate enough to live in a small seaside town, and the best time of day for him at the beach was early morning, with the sun in his face and hearing the waves roar and the wind blowing his hair around. It was a time that he felt safe, a time when he felt he could be himself and enjoy himself without anybody else bothering him. And the thing JJ liked to do most of all was to collect flotsam, lots of different articles, and bring them home to his house. JJ lived in a very humble home. They didn't have a lot of money, but what they did have was each other. And they would spend hours on end discussing his finds and talking about where they may have come from. This made JJ and his family very happy. Mostly, JJ would find shells of all different shapes and sizes, and he would put them in his bucket and save them, and then he would take them home and share them with his family. And the shells, they'd talk about the different colours and the different patterns, but shells, they were quite a normal find. But from time to time, JJ was fortunate enough to find something very mysterious. So he would dig in the sand And then he'd bring objects up out of the sand, and this particular day he'd found something blue and shiny, and when he'd gone further and dug further deeper with his spade, he found that it revealed a goblet, a beautiful shiny blue goblet. He raced home to show his mum and dad, and they sat down at the table to think about, where could this goblet have come from? His mum said, oh, it looks very expensive, I'd love one of those. And his dad said, oh, maybe it's come from a ship. Maybe it's come from the Mary Rose. Maybe it's come from the QE2. It looks like it's come from something very, very regal. And his mum said, the Mary Rose, wasn't that the Tudor ship? Which of course it was. And then they considered that maybe Henry VIII himself had drunk from the goblet, drunk his beautiful, well-made ale that people used to supply him with, because he really did enjoy the odd ale or two. On another occasion, when JJ was down the beach and he was looking out to sea as far as he possibly could towards the horizon, and as the beautiful blue sea reached the beautiful blue sky, he felt something beneath his foot. It felt hard like iron, and as he looked down, he dug, he took his spade, and he dug, and he dug, and he dug, and there he revealed beneath the sand what looked like an enormous nail, along with something that he found even more interesting, which was the latch to a door. JJ was absolutely beside himself. He didn't quite know what to do. He ran all the way home to see his parents. He felt as though his legs were not taking him anywhere. He couldn't wait to get there. And when they looked at the wares that he'd found that day, they talked about where they thought these could have come from. Dad said he thought it could have been a pirate ship, and this big latch and this big nail kept all the prisoners inside, ready to be transported to their destination. Mum wasn't quite so sure about that idea. She thought perhaps it could have been the latch to a very important chest that maybe had beautiful dresses and silks within. JJ loved discussing this with his parents, and on they talked into the early hours. Another marvellous Fotsam find, which JJ once again was thrilled to be able to see, was this. He found, under some rocks, this postcard, this beautiful picture. He wondered, who could this woman be? And then he turned around, and there, lying just a few stones away, was this beautiful bracelet. Wow, he thought, as he slipped it onto his hand. The stones were so shiny, they looked beautiful. He thought his mum would definitely like this. And there, just beneath the sand again, was a beautiful brooch with a green emerald in it. Again that night, they discussed his finds. They looked at the picture and tried to imagine who this lady could have been. Mum thought she could have been maybe a first-class passenger on the Titanic, because her clothing and her jewellery was so beautiful. Surely only somebody in the first-class compartment could have had that. But Dad, on the other hand, he had a different way of thinking. He thought perhaps she was in a cabaret, perhaps she was part of the entertainment, and she wasn't a first-class passenger. She was there to entertain the first-class passenger, and that's why she had all these jewels. Sadly though, not all JJ's finds were positive. In fact, sometimes JJ would be very upset to find that people had just strewn litter on the beach or thrown it into the ocean to be washed up. Sometimes he'd found a milk carton, or at other times he might find paper bags or rubbish from where people had sandwiches. And at alternative times he found receipts that people had bought goods and just thrown the receipts away into the ocean or onto the sand. And this used to upset him, and he would go home and talk to his parents, because they'd talk about the impact on the wildlife, how the fish need to be able to swim freely and not run the risk of being caught up by a bottle, either because and maybe the smaller items they try and eat, or the seals when they have the quoits thrown round and they get them round their necks. So this was still a fantastic discussion point for the family. One weekend, JJ had dug and dug and dug in the sand to no avail. He hadn't found a thing until suddenly, chink! What was that? He dug a bit further and a bit harder, and to his amazement appeared 2 spent bullies. He admired them, their shiny outside, and he wondered where they could have come from. And then, just a stone's throw away, he found this postcard. And when he turned it over, it became obvious that it was a postcard from France. All the way home, he kept thinking, France, all the way. This has come from France. How did it get here? When he sat down to speak with his mum and his dad, they explained to him the postcard had never been sent in the traditional way we would expect. There was no stamp on it. There was no writing on it. And yet on the front was a picture of a church that had been destroyed near Flanders Fields in Belgium. They wondered where this postcard had come from. They wondered where the spent shells had come from. Why had this postcard been bought and never sent? At one point, JJ was walking along the beach, head down, walking through the waves as they broke on the shore, when he found a hat. It was blowing down the beach towards him. He looked at the hat, he turned it around. There was no label inside. Where on earth could it come from? He tried it on. It fitted. He ran all the way home with his hands on his head so he wouldn't lose his hat. And when he got in, he took the hat off and he showed it to his parents. Wow, they said, that looks like a 1920s hat, his dad said, like my granddad would have worn. Well, I don't know, said his mum. I'm not sure at all, she said. I'm not sure I've ever really seen anything like that before. Where could it have come from? But probably JJ's greatest find as he took his spade and he dug deep into the sand was a box. Just the corner of it he could see out of his eye, and as he lifted it up and brushed the sand away from it, he could see it had a clasp on the front. This box was neither black nor white. It was a kind of in-between colour, and JJ wasn't sure whether he should even take it. Did it belong to somebody? Was it valuable? Would somebody be looking up and down the beach for it? But he couldn't see anyone, so he took it home. And when he laid it on the table to show his parents, they moved the box round and round. They turned it on its back, felt the box at the bottom. Then they turned it round its side, surveying the hinges, the clasp at the front. What would happen when they opened their box? What would they find within the box? Would it be something like one of the creatures out of Harry Potter? Would it be a pot of gold? Would it be something sinister? Or would it be something they hoped to find? They slowly opened the clothes. I'm not going to show you what's in the box. I'm going to leave that to your imagination. And just as JJ and his family enjoyed using their imagination with all his discoveries to think of all the marvellous things that might have happened, you can see how important it is to look beyond the obvious and not just take things for granted.
There's a world in my mind where I can go anywhere I want, anytime I want, and every face I see is one I know. My heart beats fast, but time moves slow. Imagination, imagination, I can change the world I see. mind to see every possibility. Hey. I've always been a builder. I've always been a dreamer. The world is my oyster. The stars are my guide. A hopeless optimistic. The one who could stick with it. The taller the mountain, the higher I fly. I've got imagination. I can change the world I see. It all begins with me. My imagination. Open up my mind to see every possibility. A golden sky, a tiny seed. The good in you, the good in me, and gentle hands to set it free. You can have it all if you just believe. I can change the world I see. It all begins with me. My imagination. Open up my mind to see every possibility.
Now, to round off our assembly, I have the very special job of handing out this week's merits and sharing what wonderful things have been happening around our school this week. So first of all, off to year 1 to see who Miss Thornborough and her team have chosen. And they've chosen firstly Olivia for some fabulous writing using her sounds to help her with spelling. And the second person that has stood out to the year 1 team is Bailey for his excellent listening in class and for being very helpful. So well done to Olivia and Bailey. Now we'll travel up the school a little bit to year 4 to find out who Miss Elliott and Mrs Smythe have been impressed with. So first of all, they've chosen Aaron Kay for being ready to learn and for excellent listening skills. And secondly, they've awarded a merit to Carly for putting her hand up and contributing to class discussions. So a big round of applause to Aaron Kay and Carly. We'll continue on up the school to the very top to year 6. This was a really difficult choice for Mrs Carl, Miss Bundock and myself, but eventually we chose Migueli because he's been so enthusiastic since his return to school and he contributes all the time to our class discussions. The second person who stood out to us is Mason, who recognised where he needed to practice in his maths a little. He did the practice and now he's cracked long multiplication, and let me tell you, that's quite a difficult one to crack. Now back down the school to year 3, where Miss Billingham and Miss James have chosen a pair of boys, Leo and Dexter, and this is for fantastic paired work. And that's brilliant to hear because that's a life skill, being able to work with others. Continuing down the school to year 2, Mr Wilkie and his team have chosen firstly Leo for working very hard in maths and showing great knowledge of his number bonds, and also Harrison for using his phonics to help him spell tricky words. So well done to Harrison and Leo. Now back up the school again to year 5, where Miss Green and Miss Pope have firstly chosen Bailey for excellent listening skills and beautiful manners. What a lovely compliment. And their second choice is Max, who has settled in so well to year 5 and is always ready to learn. And finally, back down the school, the reception team have gone for a whole class merit. So reception, you must have been very impressive. Now really, every single one of you has been a star this week. When you return from the summer holidays, there are a lot of changes in the school. There are new routines, new classes, new ways to walk around the school, and you have adapted to this so well. In fact, you've been amazing. So a huge thank you from the teachers. And finally, the house points, which are very close at the moment. In third place are the alligators with 2 points. Joint second are the parrots and the wildcats on 3. And in the lead are the dolphins on 4.